Today, we'll be making this leather key holder that is held together with a snap closure. I'll walk you through step by step, including how to install the snaps, as well as how to saddle stitch. Let's get started. First, you'll need to cut out a paper pattern. The pattern has two components, the main leather part, and then a small flap to attach your keyring. I hand drew the pattern that you just saw, but I'm releasing my first ever downloadable digital pattern, so you can find those in the description below with both a letter size 8.5 by 11 inches and A4 size available. Cut along the black border as you can see with the key, and you'll notice that I marked out these rounded corners with the dotted lines. This step is optional, and you can either do it with an x-acto knife or a corner rounder like I will show you in the video. Make sure when you print your scale is at 100%, and you can always check your sizing with the two sizing squares in the top right corner. That should measure exactly 1 by 1 centimeter and 1 inch by 1 inch. Once you have your pattern, take some masking tape and attach your pattern to whatever leather you're working with. This just helps so that your pattern will not move around as you're cutting, and I find it helpful to stick it on my skin sometimes so it's not as tacky. Now align a cork-backed ruler along the edge of your pattern and take an x-acto knife to cut the leather. Sometimes you're gonna have to do multiple passes over the leather, which is completely okay. Just go slowly so that you don't hurt yourself. Do the same for the small leather piece. Sometimes when you remove the masking tape, you'll see it leaves a bit of a mark on the leather, but I find that as long as you rub it a couple times with your finger, it'll disappear, so don't worry about that. Now, using my pattern, or you can just use a ruler, measure the exact midpoint on the inside of your leather piece and draw a line. I'm using a wooden awl, but you can use a pen with no ink, a pencil, just as long as you can see the mark. Now take that smaller piece with the pattern still attached to it, and we marked a midline from before. So match the midlines perfectly, and then use the awl to drill down so we can mark where we need to punch a hole. This will be where we attach the snap. With the small piece removed, I'm just making sure the hole is visible on both sides, so I have a clear guideline for later. And I also like using a scrap piece of leather that you just saw so that I don't damage my mat as much. I realize I keep taking the pattern on and off, but now we need to put it back on. So maybe from the start, just don't take it off. We'll start off by marking the hole that's closest to one edge and fold it into thirds. Slip a scrap piece of leather in the center, and then drill down. This method ensures that where we punch the holes is going to match up exactly to the snaps. Of course, you can follow the dimensions provided for the pattern earlier, which is 1.2 centimeters from one edge and 4 centimeters from the other edge, but I also like manually verifying. I'm going to take some time to round off corners, but this step is optional. Starting with the smaller tab, I'm taking some scrap fabric and laying that on my mat first, and then putting my tab on top of this and taking my corner rounders, lining up the edges. Hammer down with enough force and the corner should pop right off just like that. Repeat this for the other bottom corner. When you're done, this is what you should have, and I also like using a lint roller to clean up any leather bits. Now I'm using a clear ruler to measure about 0.25 inches away from the edges of the perimeter. Once you're happy with the placement, use a wooden awl or a ballpoint pen with no more ink to mark along the edge of the perimeter. Repeat this for all 4 sides. This line will eventually guide where we're going to stitch. Now I'm also going to round off all 4 corners of my main leather piece, but this is also optional. And in the case that you don't have a corner rounder like me, you can follow the rounded corner lines in the pattern. If you're following the pattern, use an x-acto knife and just go slowly along the dotted lines. With the corners rounded, this is what you should have now. Before attaching the tab to my main leather piece, I'm going to again draw a line from the top edge down 0.25 inches so that I can match this faint line that I drew as well as the center line. Moving back to our main leather piece, we are going to mark out the holes that we're going to punch. So if you buy a leather tool kit set, you should get multiple of these pronged leather hole punches. So now just go along that line that we marked and lightly press until you see that it's leaving a row of marks. As you can see, every time I move to the left, I'm actually still overlapping 2 holes, and this will help maintain a straight line. When you reach the corners, switch to a 2-prong hole punch so that you can really get around that curve. Now that everything is nicely marked, we can go to hole punching. Similar to before, we're going to take scrap pieces of leather and lay them down where we're going to be hammering. Then we'll take that same diamond head hole punch tool and align with the holes we just marked. Then with our hammer, we can hammer down until it reaches the other side. Hammering straight through is really important because when we're stitching later, it'll make our lives a lot easier. Similar to when we were marking the holes, make sure to switch to the 2-prong or even 1-prong to get around the corners. Now we're going to hole punch the holes for our snap closures. So layer some scrap fabric, take your hole punch, align it to the hole we marked earlier, and hammer down as before. If you get a snap closure set, it should come with a hole punch like this. I did the same with the smaller tab separately, and now I'm going to attach it with some blue masking tape. This will ensure that the tab doesn't move while we punch holes into the tab. With the tab taped to the inside of it, now align with the same holes that you used before and hammer down, and we should get a perfect match. I ended up hammering in 2 sections so that we could get the full width of the tab. Now let's hammer out the other 2 holes so we can put the snap closures in. Same deal as before, putting some scrap leather underneath, making sure that our hole punch is aligned and hammering down. And you can empty your hole punch like so by sticking a wooden awl or something sharp into the front of it. With all of our holes nicely punched, front and back, we are going to now sew, and I'll walk you through how to saddle stitch. You will need some type of wax thread, so now measure the perimeter of your leather key holder, and then we're going to multiply this length by 4. So as you can see in a bit, and when I zoom out, I just overlap this 4 times. Cut the thread, and then we're going to thread 2 needles to both ends. Pass one end of the thread through the eye of the needle, and then scrunch the thread together like this, and you'll see that the threads will fray apart a bit. Pass the needle through that fray, and then do it again a little bit further up. Pass it through the fray again like so, and you should see a figure S skewered on your needle. Bring this figure S downwards, and voila, you threaded one end of the needle. On the other end of the thread, do the exact same thing. So we're passing the end through the eye of the needle, getting a bit of length so that we can scrunch it up, scrunch, and pass through the fray one time, scrunch, pass through the fray one more time, and then we see that figure S again, and pull the end of the thread down, past the eye of the needle, like so. Just like that, we've threaded both needles, so let's get sewing. I'm going to start the stitch at the bottom of my keychain holder. Thread one needle through one of the holes and find the midpoint of that thread. Now, taking the upper needle, pass it through the hole on its left. And don't pull it all the way through though. When it's about a couple inches through, take the bottom needle and go through that same hole. And this part is really important. We want to make sure the needle is not caught on any of the upper thread. When you have verified that it's not caught on anything, you can pull everything taut. Now that the first stitch is taut, let's do that again. Take the top needle and put it through the hole on its left, and don't pull all the way through yet. Pull it partially, and then with the bottom needle, we're going to go through that same hole, making sure not to get it caught in the upper thread. When you verify that it's not going to get caught, now we can pull it all the way through. Now continue this stitch pattern until we get all the way around the perimeter. As we're nearing the end, complete that last stitch as usual. Now we've gone fully around the perimeter, we're going to back stitch. So take that top needle, and instead of going to the left, now we're going to go to the right. Similar as before, we're not going to pull it all the way through, just partially, and take the bottom needle and make sure we can pass through with no issues. And this is our back stitch. We're going to do this 3 or 4 more times, and then we can cut our thread. So again, taking that top needle, and we're going to the right now instead of to the left, going with the bottom needle up, making sure there's no interference with the top thread, and then pulling all the way through. With our last stitch completed, we can take a pair of scissors and cut as closely as we can to the stitch. And of course, we can free our needles from the thread now. Our stitching is done. Now let's work on adding the snaps. We can remove the blue tape that was keeping our tab on our leather since we're stitched in now. Each snap closure is actually 4 parts, and your fabric will go in between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now we're going to attach the snaps to our leather key holder. So take piece number 4, it should be fairly flat with a stem poking through the center, and poke it through the bottom piece of leather. Now take component number 3 and place it on top. If you bought a snap closure kit, it should have come with this flat metal disc. We're going to put it underneath, and with this rod that should also come with your kit, we're going to hammer down. After hammering a couple times, pieces 4 and 3 should be nicely secure to the leather. Now we're going to take component number 1, which has a smooth top and also a stem poking through, and thread it through the upper flap. Now we're going to take component number 2, and just like before, align it on top of the metal disc, put the rod into the center, and hammer down. After hammering a couple times, I like to wiggle the snap with my fingers to see if it's still loose and if I need to hammer down any more to tighten it. With both sides of this snap hammered now, we can go ahead and test whatever keychain ring we're going to use, and it seems like it fits well and it can still move around. Now let's work on installing the snap closures so that the whole leather key holder can close. Starting with component number 1 this time, we're going to attach it to the right side and make sure the smooth metal is the same side as the smooth leather. And then again, taking component number 2, putting it underneath, and hammer away. And now let's move over to the left side. And if we're thinking about it closing like a trifold, then we're going to put the flat side of component number 4 flush to the inside. And then we'll put component number 3 on top of that, and also like before, we'll hammer. And look, we're almost done. We have all the snaps in, and now the key holder can close properly. Usually for leather products, I do like to sand all of the edges before I start burnishing. For some reason, I forgot to do it in this project, but it still turned out okay, so I guess if you want to skip it, it's optional. For this step, I have a little container of water, and I'm using my finger to dab the edge with water, and then I'm going with a leather burnisher tool and rubbing back and forth. And this friction basically creates heat and seals the edge of the leather so that it won't be as liable to damage. So do this step for the whole perimeter of your key holder. When you're done with the water burnishing, you can stop there, or I like to use this leather wax that I also use for my leather shoes, and just do the same thing, but this time with wax. So again, using my finger to rub some wax on the edge, and then going in with the wood burnisher to finish the edges. And just like that, you're done. Attach your keys to the key ring first, and then you can clip it into your leather key holder, and now you can carry your keys in your bag without worrying that it'll scratch anything. And you also just have a neat project. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.